Shalom, shalom. First, I want to start off by giving all honor, praises, and infinite glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors into the elders, apostles, and bishops of GMS Great Millstone, who rule well, teach, and edifying peace and blessings to you, sincere Akim, while Akwat in his household of faith. My name is Ishai from the GMS Arizona Church in Ottawa, Matazah. Gonna make an edifying video, Lord willing, going out to brothers and you few sincere sisters that deal with the ultimately expectation demon. The expectations of the world, expectations of what are you gonna do with your life type shit. And me and my personal lot and a few brothers close to me as well, have a lot of people in life talking about some, you gotta go, what do they say? The world is your oyster, alluding to, go, crack open the world, go do what you gotta do, and, to be successful, to be happy, and I'm saying this to even then, I'm working with this nurse, and she telling me, she gives me this paper, and it's, the 10 principles of life. It's like you have to have all 10 of these principles of life down, to have a successful life. And it goes into career, financial, even fucking dared to say media, or like social media, like, and spiritual, physical, and some of the things are actually like, valid. You want to take care of your physical health and you want to take care of your spiritual health. But we take care of our physical health, so it aids our spiritual health. You don't want bodily ailments and shit getting in the way of your reading and praying and fasting. You don't want to, not brush your teeth and shit and eat sugary ass foods so to where it hurts you to talk and chew food and shit. Like, you don't want to do that. That's fucked up. But ultimately, all things that we do is for the sake of pleasing Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. We don't live for ourselves, man. And they be always talking about this shit, like, oh, you going to school, you should go to school, you should go, get this job, go secure this bag and shit. But this is the Babylonian way of thinking. We're not men that go with the crowd. That's that sellout shit, ultimately, man. A lot of these people, man, they sold out to the system. They sold out to that Babylonian juice, and they so fucking drunk. And a bitch about it too is that, they try to convince others to drink of the same shit, because they're dealing with the sore displeasure of being fucking drunk in this system, bro. You ever get around a drunk person, that drunk person gonna try to get you to drink some drinks, man. But ultimately, man, you come into this truth, you become an individual in Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You stand 10 toes down on that which is right, not that which these niggas think. If I were to agree with these niggas, they both be wrong. Alright, so ultimately they can go chew some fucking rocks. These niggas talking about go to school, we in God's school, okay? We in Yahweh Bashem Yahushai school. We're trying to be gods, okay? We gonna get with the Lord's program and not Esau's program. Because ultimately, man, you want to sit there and conform to this world and try to meet the expectations of all these people, you're gonna be just as desolate as they are, whether it be even, you don't want to be disrespectful to them, especially if it's your parents. Your parents telling you to go to school, they just doing that out of the spirit to make sure that you got your funds right and shit. So make sure that you can handle your own, but don't feel as though that you have to meet all those expectations. For at the end of the day, we understand that all things ultimately that we go through are for our betterment and draw us closer to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Not to we're not in this truth to get a bag. Right? A lot of the niggas that's in this truth to get a bag aren't in this truth, man. They're hirelings, right? We're not in this truth to get women. We're not in this truth for any other reason besides to seek salvation and please the Lord, to fear the Lord and keep His commandments. That's the whole duty of man. We're not in this thing for our own selves, bro. To sit there and fill your belly and shit, and that's bogus. So Matthew 6 chapter, jumping all the way to the bottom here. It says, therefore, starting at 31, it says, therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or wherewithal shall we be clothed? So we shouldn't even be meditating on where we're supposed to get our next fix for things from, man. And that's why it's important to know that Lord's Prayer, man. Knowing that Lord's Prayer is, give me my daily bread. You know, ultimately, we want our daily bread spiritually and physically. You know, we want our means to get by, but we also want that spiritual means to get by. You know, a lot of these niggas only do a part-time job, right? They work full-time and they maybe raise a kid. That's a part-time job compared to what you do in the truth, man. You know, that's only half of the deal. You know, the full deal is managing your life in the world and your life in the truth. That's the full-time job. Okay, and that's what's the important part, man. The majority part of that job is ultimately managing your spiritual aspects, man. You don't want to let go of everything in the world and shit. You don't want to go max out all your credit cards and quit your job and shit. Like, that's stupid. You know, it's not even wise. You know, even Apostle Paul had to work, you know, and at the same time as doing the ministry every once in a while to make sure that his funds got met. You know, because that's just the day and age that we're in, bro. We're in this hellish captivity in these scattered nations all across the world, and chiefly in Babylon. And in Babylon, if you don't work, you don't eat. Scriptures even say that, man. So, you know, ultimately we achieve a balance to just get by. You know, being as pilgrims isn't fucking trying to sit there and become a doctor or a lawyer or the next politician, man. We're not out here trying to fucking be that type of person, bro. Them niggas are all gonna die by the hand of the indignation of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and we seek life. You know, we seek that which is true. You know, we're not trying to seek a fucking bachelor's degree and master's. And if you already in school, you don't have to drop out of school. You know, as long as these things don't impede on your spiritual walk, you growing in the spirit and you doing what you have to do, then, you know, blessed is you, because ultimately that's just a gift from the Lord, bro. He gave you that lot. But if you take upon ventures that actually impede your ability to be in this truth, be in spirituality, man, do your reading, prayers, fastings, etc., etc., right, then that's when you start falling into that fucking expectation trap. You know, like, why the fuck are you even doing all this? All right, you know, is it the love of the world? Like the scripture saying, 1 John 2 and about like 19, you know, the lust, you know, or 2 and 17. It's like the spirits of the world is like the love of the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. You know, we're not here to seek those fucking things, man. We're here to bring fruit meet for repentance, because ultimately, at the end of the day, man, you know, we fucked up and we're here for our judgment. We're in captivity right now. You can't forget that shit, man. Of course we're not gonna be on top. You know, of course we ain't gonna have the most of everything. We're in fucking captivity. And even in captivity, the Lord has still set us up, you know, a table. You know, and beautifully, one of the brothers actually brought out this precept, the oldie but goodie. I'm gonna get this one as well, you know, here in a second. But this is Psalms 23, and starting at verse 4, it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." All right, so where is the valley of the shadow of death? That's here in Babylon. You know, you read in Revelation 11 and verse 8, it says, you know, those that are dead, on the bodies that lay dead in let me just get it, man. Salaki, I'm butchering it. Chopped and screwed, chopped up and not slopped up. Salak. But this is Revelation 11 and 8. It says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord is crucified." So that's what Babylon is, man. That's the valley of the shadow of death. All these niggas are spiritually dead from the neck up. You know, but the Lord has prepared us, you know, a table in the midst of that, you know, which is this truth. You know, like that rod and that staff, that comfort. You know, we've been comforted by this truth, man. We've been given, you know, abilities through this, man, to walk through here. And the Lord sends his angels upon those and, you know, fear him. You know, Psalms 34 and 7, the angels of the Lord campeth around them that fear him, roughly paraphrasing. So ultimately, man, we're not here to sit there and try to soak up the world. You know, we're here to pay our judgment, to get by. You know, if brothers have nice things, that's a gift from Yahweh Shem Yahushai, right? You know, the scriptures talk about force not the course of the river. You know, if you force the course of a river, it's actually going to topple over itself. You have to naturally let that river, you know, fill up the way it's supposed to, the way the Lord intended it to do. All right, so if you don't, you know, have all these certain blessings and you see, oh, but you can be in the truth and have all these things, doesn't mean you should go chasing after it, man. You know, that shit's covetous in a way, man. You don't want to sit there and fucking go out of your way and try to achieve all these fucking things. Ultimately, bro, the things that brothers have, they have it by like literally a gift, by mercy. Like if a brother's gifted a certain thing, they didn't really strive super hard to get it most of the time. Or if they did get it, sometimes it was already in the world that they got it at the time. So ultimately, it's just, you come into this truth, your mind is strived towards Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. You're not striving towards, the mechanisms of this world, bro. And that's a blessing. All right, whereas the rest of these niggas are blind, dumb, and naked, right? We in this truth are aware of the things that are coming upon the face of this earth. We're aware of the indignation of the Lord that is about to set ablaze this fucking society. But reading on, is Matthew 6 and verse 32, and it reads, says, "For after all these things do the Gentiles seek, for your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have no need of all these things." All right, so ultimately, that you have need of all these things. So the Lord knows exactly what you need before you even ask, and you might ask this and that and et cetera, but like most of the time that shit could ultimately be not the best thing for you. The Lord gives exactly what you need, and sometimes he'll give you more. Look at King Solomon. King Solomon, in 1 Kings, the 3rd chapter, he prayed for wisdom to judge over this great people, and the Lord said, I will give thee wisdom, and I also grant thee much more, roughly paraphrasing. So, and the King Solomon had all those blessings, but he didn't pray for those riches or those women or the power or the navies or nothing. He prayed just to, be wise and understanding in Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, to know how to judge well and rule well. All right, and we're trying to take on the same nature. The things written aforetime are written for our learning. We're not trying to sit here and politic with our flesh, bro. You politic with the flesh, that motherfucker gonna kill your ass. That nigga's a backstabbing ass person. The heart is deceitful above all things. We have these scriptures as also a reminder as the kind of body that we're in and what we deal with, bro. You want to sit there and argue with the wretched ass men, what do you think you're gonna fucking get? You're not gonna get anything. You're not gonna get anywhere with that conversation besides just in the same fucking circle, So reading on, it says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." So ultimately, we want to seek the kingdom first, and we'll have the best of everything in the kingdom, Lord, when we make it, man. And even sometimes the Lord will give you certain gifts and blessings, while you're sitting there focused in that straight gate. Like, okay, I've been grinding out, the Lord's going to maybe bless you with a woman here and there. Maybe the Lord's going to bless you with a little bit of cash here and there, man. A little extra something, like a little cherry on top. All right, but ultimately, it's the Lord's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. All right, but ultimately, if you seek in Esau's kingdom, like who the fuck are you? Like we want the kingdom of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, that true purity, right? You see, I'm watching this. I've been watching these videos on the YouTube. This guy that sells gold and shit, and people are selling these gold ounces and shit for what? It's $4,539 per ounce, and they selling all kinds of ounces, and he's giving them stacks, 50K, 100K. Man, in the kingdom, we gonna have so much gold, you ain't even gonna fucking pay attention to it. Just like in the days of King Solomon, but even, exemplified or exaggerated, I should say, like even more, because the kingdom to come is gonna be, even better than that which it is. That which we see now. The Garden of Eden represents this whole world. That this place is going to be brought back up, except Babylon the Great is going to be like desolate as a memorial, of the Lord's indignation upon these fucking people. But ultimately, this world is going to be replenished, man. This world is going to be rejuvenated in the resources, the minerals, all of it, man. And it's going to be done in purity, where Esau, Edom, isn't at the fucking top head of everything, basically just sifting all the things out and poisoning everything, man. Reading on, it says, "Take therefore no thought for tomorrow shall take thought of the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." So, don't even stress it. Don't worry about it. We stay, like they tell you in the world a lot of time, man, you control what you can control. Don't be seeking to control what you can't. Because ultimately, man, there's a lot of things that are out of our control. We can't just get up and fly right now. You might have to go, to the doctor's office and shit. You can't just get up and heal yourself right now. You know, you control what you can control. Like you avoid those situations, and you try to just do better in your own lot. And ultimately, we want to seek salvation. So by controlling what you can control, what do? You know, we work on our salvation with, you know, we work on our own salvation with fear and trembling, as the scriptures say. You know, we read, you know, study to show thyself approved, right? You know, and we do our works too, man. You know, that's why making these videos is important for, you know, all the brothers that make videos. And, you know, that's why it's important to be out there on the highways and byways. That's why it's important to be, you know, with that agape, man, that brotherly love. To doing the work of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, man, because we're working out our own salvation with fear and trembling, bro. We're doing that which we know that we must. And ultimately that which is in our nature to do. The elect, their purest nature is ultimately is going to want to do those things, man. You know, and through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, the apostles, man, certainly those men, I believe, are the elect, man. Very likely could be one of the elect men. You know, I say very, very, very likely they could be one of the elect men. You know, and they're extremely laborers, man. They've been doing this for decades. You know, day in, day out. You know, without, you know, taking a fucking month break or week break here, and, you know, through rain and storm and wind and heat. You know, they've been out there putting in this work, man. You know, and that should put a fire in your belly as well to be like, man, you know. Like, we in this thing together, man. You know, we in this thing together. You know, you've entered into another man's labor. You don't want to be that lazy young man on the job site, man. Fuck that. You want to do your best that you can. You know, and it doesn't mean bug out and shit, you know, by overly doing something, like overly reading and overly studying, because you can overly do something, but just, you know, push it, you know, push that weight, man. Try your best. You know, turn on that nitrous. You know, get done what you got to get done at the end of the day, man. You know, and it's a blessing to be a part of this thing as well as a mercy. You know, we're not guaranteed salvation. There's a lot of people that have heard this truth and have walked straight on by. You know, there's people that have tried to rehearse this truth and fell on out. So the fact that you woke up today with the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, the fact that you watching videos, the fact that you reading, studying and seeking out the Lord, bro. You know, the scripture saying, Baruch, the 4th chapter, you know, seek ye the Lord for the time lost, you know, seek ye the Lord 10 times more. That's a blessing, man. You know, the brother Tazar from the GMS Arizona Church, he says, you know, I'm in the business of counting blessings, you know, and that's a beautiful brother. That's a cool brother, man. And ultimately, you know, it's true, man. We in the business of counting blessings. We're not out here to do anything other besides, you know, fear the Lord and keep his commandments. And that's a blessing in and of itself, man. You know, we got to strive for this thing. You know, every man is striving for masteries is temperate in all things, man. We keep balances. You know, we do our best to be our best, man. But getting Exodus 23 and verse 2, it says, "Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to rush judgment." Reading that in the NLT. It says you must not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you are called to testify in a dispute, it says, do not be swayed by the crowd to twist justice. Okay, so ultimately, man, we don't follow the wicked crowd, man. You know, we're sheep, but we're like the black sheep. The rest of these motherfucking useless eaters and shit, they can go walk in a pit. You know, the scriptures talk about the blind lead the blind lest they both fall into the ditch. You got all these fucking people in the world, oh, go to school, oh, invest in this, oh, crypto that, and all this bullshit. All right, you blind motherfuckers can go fall into that ditch. Straight up. But ultimately, those that are in this truth, man, we stand on our posts, prophesying day in, day out, you know, of the downfall of this kingdom and the return of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. You know, talking about the law, statutes, and commandments. You know, and ultimately preaching this gospel. That's what we're going to stand 10 toes down on. That's our investment. All right, this is the ultimate investment of history, man. This is the ultimate investment of eternity for you. All right, because ultimately you put in what you get out. The elect are going to put in their earnest effort. The Lord has mercy on his elect. And guess what? You know, they're going to be set up as immortals, man. They put off that mortal and put on immortality. Okay? So that if you want to talk investments, and if you want to talk about delegation of time, and whatever the fuck the world wants to talk about, this is ultimately the best thing that you could do for yourself, your family, and ultimately we want to please the Lord too, man. This church was purchased by the precious blood of Hamashiach, 1 Peter 1:18. This thing is so much bigger than us. It's not just about you, man. The Lord is crucified, literally pierced through, and that's heavy, man. Sometimes something that's a faith booster too is reading that John the 19th chapter. You read that John the 19th chapter, talks about that whole process, man, and it's heavy. That's a heavy chapter right there, man, and it hits every time I read it through the Spirit, man. You can't forget about the head of this whole thing, man. This is Yahweh Bashem Yahushua's movie, man. This is the Lord's movie, and we just in it, and shit. We don't do anything. It's the Lord in us that does a thing, man. Lord gives us faith. The Lord gives us all the abilities to do these things and exercise them. So with that gift and with that talent, exercise your talent, as the scriptures talk about in the parable of the talents, man. Exercise it. Don't be fucking, too caught up in the worldly shit. In 2 Timothy says he that warreth into let me get it, man. Let me get it. Entangleth himself not with the world. Roughly paraphrase. Let me see. It says, no man that warreth entangle himself with the affairs of his life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. Ultimately, we want to please the Lord, bro. We're not trying to be entangled with this fucking life, man. Entangled with these people. This shit's all wretched, man. Vanity upon vanities and sore vexations. Ecclesiastes, the 2nd chapter, King Solomon said, I've set my heart to no folly. And all he found was vanities, bro. Vanities upon vanities. So, yeah. Don't feel like you have to meet any expectation in the world. I meet the expectation of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. Follow his commandments and fear the Lord and follow his commandments, man. If you put your hands to that plow, there's no turning back. Your earnest expectation to meet is Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. And that's not to say that you can't, you can't take care of your business. Brothers take care of their business, man. If you got to work the job, work the job. But just make sure the things that in this life aren't impeding you aren't entangling yourself, in them. And that's your personal walk, man. I can't tell you how to live. The same way brothers give me, advice. They can't tell me, they can't fucking pick up a controller, an Xbox controller, and start playing my life for me, man. You have a personal relationship with Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. The Lord's giving you the description. That's why the scriptures are necessary, because it gives you the knowledge to have that discretion to be able to move wisely in this thing, man. Ultimately, we've all fallen short of the glory of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. So, right now we're just trying to build up our wisdom, because ultimately this is all about to be applied very soon. The time of Jacob's trouble was at hand, and soon enough, man, the prophets are going to be shut up, and what you got is what the fuck you got. And if you ain't got it, you shit out of luck, Jake. But hey, man, I pray this lesson was edifying. I want to last give all honor, praises, and infinite glory unto Yahweh Bashem Yahushua Bashem Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom.